Good afternoon, folks. I'm Rob Franick. I'm editor-in-chief here at the Princeton Review. I want to thank you all for joining us for our webinar on the new digital SAT. Folks, I have you for an hour of time. It is going to be an action-packed hour. If you've joined us for past sessions, I try to keep these as lively as possible, and I have two exceptional Princeton Review and Tutor.com folks who are going to introduce themselves on the next slide, both Mercedes and Keisha. So we'll take a look at the next slide, folks, and you can introduce yourselves. I'll just note again, I'm editor-in-chief at the Princeton Review. My big boy job is I am responsible for publications throughout our partnership with Penguin Random House. We have a little over 150 publications at the Princeton Review. Test prep related, college admission related, financial aid, career services, and of course the whole spectrum of graduate and professional school titles as well. I still write a couple of those books. Some of them are up here. Please, folks, I'm hoping that today's session doesn't end with our 60 minutes that we're going to be spending together. So do not be bashful. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Of course, I started a new Instagram account this summer. It is still relatively new, but it is packed with content on the digital SAT, college admissions, paying for it, all the things that we're going to be touching on today. So either take a screenshot of this or just follow me on Instagram now, and I'm hoping to stay in contact with you that way. Plain old-fashioned email works. I'm completely agnostic to the platform. Now we'll look at the next slide, and we'll introduce both Mercedes and Keisha. Keisha, take it away, my friend.
Thanks, Rob. We're excited to have you all today. My name is Keisha. I work with our sales department at the Princeton Review for our institutional programs. And I've been with the Princeton Review for 18 years, working with schools and families to prepare students for college admissions and college readiness programming. So happy to be here, and you'll hear from me more later.
Excellent. Keisha, I'm so grateful to share the microphone with you, my friend. It's wonderful, wonderful. Mercedes, looking forward to hearing from you.
Hi, everyone. I am Mercedes Munn. I oversee K-12 institutional marketing as the marketing director here at Tutor.com and the Princeton Review. Excited to have all of you with us today. I will also be serving as moderator, so please, if you have any questions, add it to the Q&A box, and then Rob's going to have a series of questions and quizzes, so please participate and add your answers to the Q&A chat. I will be moderating and looking at the chat box, sharing your answers, sharing your questions with Keisha and Rob.
Awesome, awesome. Mercedes, that sounds great. So folks, again, just to reiterate, Mercedes will be my eyes and ears directly onto the chat. So do not be bashful. If there are questions that you have on any of the beats that we hit today, volley them to Mercedes. She'll volley them back to me. I will do my best to answer them during the hour that we're together. If we don't get to all of your questions, Mercedes and myself and Keisha will follow up with you with those answers later on. So all of them will be answered. Mercedes, we'll take a look at our first slide. Folks, I have been a long-time teacher at the Princeton Review, as many of the folks here that you'll be hearing from are folks that you'll be working with. And I did take a quick look at the list of folks that were joining us today from across the educational spectrum. I think all of us share this. Many of us were teachers or are still teachers now. So we're going to start off with a quiz. Folks, I also deeply dislike it when speakers read slides to people that can full well read themselves. But I'm going to break my promise and just read you these couple of questions. You're going to use the chat. Mercedes is going to see it, and she's going to volley those answers back to me. In what year was the College Board actually founded? And let's just remember that the College Board creates all things SAT as well as the 38 AP exams. So what do we think, folks? When was the College Board? I beg you, don't Google this. Let's just test the college and test prep knowledge that we have in our noggins today. Slug it in the chat. Tell me what you think. Mercedes, I'm ready with my pen. The year the College Board was founded.
We have 1950 from Barb.
Okay.
1973 from Brian.
Okay.
We have 1945.
Okay, it's getting interesting. Yeah, you see, Mercedes, you wait the couple extra beats and all the interesting answers come out. Yeah.
We have 92, 1945, 1973. 1967.
Okay.
So if everyone can keep adding their answers to the Q&A feature. And
sure.
1900.
1800. Oh, well done. All right, Mercedes, I think we'll do the big reveal here. You ready? Drum roll. Here it is. Let's hit that button. 1899. Well, first of all, whoever was following either 1800 or in the 1800s, well done. The College Board, pesky as it is, has been with us for a really long time. And folks, I've been frenemies with the College Board, for many reasons, SAT and AP related. But again, we're going to poke at things today that make us nervous, or sometimes, just thinking about a test prep entity or a testing entity. We might have some concerns that we come to the table with, but we're going to make sure that you exit specifically with all the data about this. This is just prime the pump questions here. 1899, College Board was founded. It is, as its name notes, it is a consortium, or was a consortium of schools and of course administrators as well. We'll talk more about that in the next slide. Mercedes, let's hit our number 2 question. Folks, there's only 3 trivia questions here. In what year was the first SAT given? So as we talked about, the College Board creates the SAT. What year did it roll out the SAT? Slug it into the chat. We've primed the pump already. Your fingers are ready on your phones and your computers. Slug it in the chat. Tell Mercedes, I'm ready with my pencil. Number 2 pencil.
I believe we have 1946.
Okay.
1950.
Okay.
1935.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
1953.
Yeah.
1920.
Okay.
I have a few answers. 1965, 1923.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. All right, we'll do that, folks. Thank you for following your answers our way. Here it is, Mercedes' big reveal. 1926. Whoever said 1925? Well done, folks. The SAT has been with us for a really long time. In its imperfect incarnation, we also know, and we're going to be hitting on this today, the SAT continues to change, right? It's changing in 2024, changed in 2016, changed in 2005, changed in 1996. So the SAT, as well as the ACT, and we'll be hitting on both the Montagues and the Capulets of standardized testing today, focus more on the digital SAT, but let's just remember this. Okay, here's our third prime the pump question, then we'll move on. Mercedes. In what year was the first ACT given? Folks, again, the Capulets and Montagues, the Hatfields and McCoys of of standardized testing. What do we think? ACT, the younger upstart. That's the only hint I'm going to give you. Slug it in the chat. Tell Mercedes what you think.
We have 1951, 1935, 1932, 1962, and 1970.
Okay, great. Folks, thank you for following the answers. Okay, Mercedes, we'll do the big reveal. Last trivia question to start off. 1959. Well done. Folks, ACT started in 1959. Obviously there was no competition for the SAT, which we'll talk about. And folks, again, I'm not going to read these to you, but just, and I should note as well that we're going to send you home with this entire presentation deck. Feel free to use the content in this deck to lead conversations with your own students, with their families, with other counselors in your communities. And again, happy to answer questions as the months and the next couple of months progress, certainly up to the March exam. As we talked about, College Board was created in 1899, a consortium of schools and both prep schools as well as colleges. The College Board, you may be familiar with this nomenclature, is that the college boards were essentially substantive tests that were discipline-centric, very much like today's modern AP exams. 1926, we already beat this point down. The SAT was founded in 1954. The guessing penalty was introduced for the SAT. That went away in 2016, where students no longer received a quarter point off for every incorrect answer on the SAT. 59, the ACT starts. 71, the SAT ties performance on the PSAT, the preliminary SAT, to merit-based scholarships. Mercedes, we'll take a look at the next slide. College Board. Now this changed our industry. 1978, the College Board started to release its first practice SAT tests. And then you'll see at that time, or quickly after that time, lots of test prep companies or mom and pops that were starting to do test prep work, looking at those exams and then teaching from those exams. 1993, the Scholastic assessment test, right? Before that, the acronym for the SAT was the Scholastic Aptitude Test, then the Scholastic Assessment Test. The SAT, actually, we'll put this into the chat. Does anybody know what the SAT stands for right now? and you could just tell Mercedes in the chat a good test prep trivia question, not on the books. What do we think? From Scholastic Aptitude to Scholastic Assessment, what do we think? Mercedes, if there's anybody volleying, you just read it to me.
We have nothing in Scholastic Aptitude Test.
Yeah, Scholastic Aptitude Test, it was that in 1926 through 1993, but it stands for nothing. Big round of applause, whoever volleyed that answer. You're right. The SAT is no longer an acronym. It simply stands for the proper noun for the SAT. A little geeky trivia right there. ACT, again, simply stands for the ACT. You can read all of these things. As we talked about, 2005, the SAT changed. ACT was the younger upstart, but it started to take back a ton of market share from the SAT throughout the mid-aughts into the early 2010s. And then, of course, the SAT began to change in 2016. Mercedes, we'll take a look at that last slide here. Let us tell us, and I know we have a wide representation of regional folks with us today. And let's just say this out loud. You know, there was a myth a few years ago, and it's a continued myth today, that only colleges on the left and right coasts were honoring the SAT, and schools in the great middle of the country were honoring the ACT. It was wrong in the past, and it's wrong now. So we understand that these tests are universally acceptable, and they continue to evolve and change. 2016, the SAT got rid of the guessing penalty. 2020 was the demise of the SAT subject tests. Anyway, you can see these things as we talked about before. Just one quick note, and we'll talk about this as the beats go on here. The University of California system, that's the UC system, as well as the Cal State system. Other than our home state here in New York, the SUNY system, the State University of New York system, the Cal States and the SUNY system are the largest in the country. The Cal States and the UCs did away with the use of the SAT in 2021. Continuing to be test-free or test blind, and those words are used interchangeably. And of course, 2022, when the SAT was, when the College Board first noted that the SAT would move from a pencil and paper to a digital exam. That's our quick history. Mercedes, we'll move on to that first slide. And Mercedes, you could just put up the 3 points that we'll talk about here. Folks, we're going to spend, the remainder of our time, save for the time that Keisha is going to talk about with us at the end, the structure of the SAT, the content, and of course, strategies for the digital SAT. We're also going to talk a little bit about how college and universities, I'm sure that this is of interest for you, how they're continuing to use the pencil and paper test. Will it be a separate but equal view of the new incarnation of the digital exam? And we'll talk about those things as well. Mercedes, we'll take a look at that first section here. The structure of the digital SAT. Okay, this is going to seem like we're splitting hairs on language, but I'm going to explain this to you. Mercedes, we'll just take a look. The SAT is going digital, but it is not going online. Those educators or school leaders that are with us today, if you were in your schools or in other schools during the height of the pandemic, so let's just walk down memory lane, as painful as it is. March-ish of 2020, most schools dismiss their students and completely embrace a virtual model. The SAT, and of course the ACT, but the SAT during that time was nearly impossible to take, right? A student couldn't take an SAT near from the December administration in 2019 all the way through a late August administration of 2020. So many students during that year in 2020, and also 21 and 22, it was difficult to actually take an SAT. Funny enough, the SAT, as we talked about before, the SAT or the College Board owns not only the SAT but the AP exams. In that first year, May of 2020 into June of 2020, the College Board allowed students to take the AP exams in a online setting. And those of you who were teachers or administrators at that time will likely remember this. It did not go off without a hitch. Many students that lost Wi-Fi, or their hardware was insufficient, or they lost power, or their hardware simply broke during the administration of any of those online AP exams in May and June of 2020, unfortunately, those students were not able to capture their scores. Their exams timed out, and there was very little recourse for those students. Those exams were an online exam. The College Board learned from those experiences, and again, props to the College Board here, learned from those experiences of the difficult rollout that happened in 2020 online AP exams, and that's why they've created this new digital SAT in its digital format. So it's an app, the Blue Book app, named after the traditional Blue Book, physical Blue Book that the College Board used for its practice exams. So very much like the current day pencil and paper SAT. And Mercedes, we can take a look at these next 3 points. The digital SAT will be taken at a testing site, obviously. Those of you who are testing sites already for the pencil and paper test, you could teach the master's class on this point, but many of those schools will also be the testing centers for the new digital exam. I suspect that many of the folks that are with us today will be literally the digital SAT Marines. You will be proctoring these exams come March, and hence why you're likely showing up today. But you'll also note that the digital SAT is not going simply to be reserved for Saturday administrations, but there's a gaining momentum for giving those exams during the school day. There'll also be a proctored environment. So it'll be a live proctor, just like the current pencil and paper SAT. But again, learning from what happened during the AP administrations in May and June of 2020, where it was an unproctored environment, now we are factoring in those proctors. So again, to summarize this, and again, I think we have to give homage here to the College Board, because this is forward thinking, in my opinion. But forward thinking, we understand that the College Board has made some significant strides in ensuring that students are going to have an actual person in that live environment that can help them with should a problem occur, and that there is no question of cheating during the exams, which we'll hit on in the next point. Now, the SAT will use the same scoring scale, as we can see here. And this is a sigh of relief. I'm sure you know this already, but that idea of the exam between pencil and paper and digital being literally separate but equal. And in this case, I think the College Board is really trying to do that. And one of those ways is ensuring that the scoring stays the same. Funny enough, the scoring for the PSAT, the preliminary SAT, didn't stay the same. But again, be that as it may, we understand that there's going to be transubstantiation between both of those exams, pencil and paper and digital, and this likely feels good. Now, the big piece that I know your students are asking about, and likely their parents, and this is really, in my experience, a win for students, right? A 3-hour exam, that is the pencil and paper SAT that near all of us likely suffered through, or your students up until this year have suffered through. That 3-hour exam is turning into a 2-hour exam. And again, this is going to seem like splitting hairs here, but it is a 2-hour and 14-minute exam. But be that as it may, from 3 hours to 2-ish hours, this is a huge thing, right? Because this last point, the reduction of fatigue, testing fatigue. I've been a long-time teacher, as I noted. I know many of you have been in the classroom before. Maybe you are teachers or tutors yourselves for standardized tests. Being able to focus, or being obliged to focus for 3 hours, is a difficult compact for students. And this idea of saving 45 minutes to an hour is of great value to students. The sections will be shorter and there will be fewer questions. Now, this all feels good. And when I talk to students and parents about it, you can feel the relief in the room, which I'm sure you're going to feel the same thing when you discuss this with students and parents. That is until we start to talk about the adaptive nature of the exam. So Mercedes, let's take a look at the next slide. Now, the redesigned SAT, we're just going to spend some time talking about this slide. Feel free to take a screenshot. Again, we're going to supply you with this deck, but just to note, any teacher or administrator that's with us today, if you took a GRE or near any of the other professional school exams, but the GRE is a good one as an example. From the mid-1990s, obviously up until today, the GRE embraced this idea of it being an adaptive exam. And it's an adaptive exam by question. But the SAT, in its new incarnation, in digital incarnation, will be adaptive by module. And as you can see here, in the reading and writing section and in the math section, again, scored the same way as the pencil and paper test. But in that first module, students will see 25 questions. There are 2 practice questions. You can call them warm-up questions. The SAT, the College Board may use those questions later on in a future exam. Multiple choice. We're going to talk about this as we move on. But here's the thing that I want you to remember. From the digital aspect, if students perform well on that first 25 question cohort in that reading and writing exam, then they will be rewarded for their superlative efforts and results in that first module by seeing questions that are likely harder in the second module. But the same logic holds true if students performed poorly on that first 25 questions. So if students did not answer the majority of those 25 questions correctly, the next 25 questions that they will see will likely be easier than the first, and hence the adaptive model, right? So students that are doing, no, Mercedes, let's just go back. So when we think about this, this is of value to students because they're saving time because of the adaptive nature of the exam. Now, when I teach a course, or many of my colleagues teach a current pencil and paper SAT exam, teach a course for it, I tell all of my students that they receive no additional points for answering the toughest question on the SAT than they do the easiest question on the SAT. So the obvious logic is answer all the easy questions first, and then with your remaining time, focus on the harder questions. But that logic, it still holds true here, but it only holds true per module, right? So that idea of students having the ability to be incredibly nimble in those first 25 questions in those modules, they have free reign. They can move around from those questions. They can mark them as to come back later. And in that way, that platform, the digital platform, the Blue Book app, is quite elegant. But let's remember that students will not be able to go back to the first module from the second module. And that's the difference between some of the things with the digital SAT and the pencil and paper test. So sadly, and this is the part that is biting for me to explain, is that now students will receive additional points for answering the toughest question on the SAT and fewer points for the easier questions in the SAT. It saves time, but again, and you're probably figuring out the math here, it adds stress to the process because students, at least in the environment that we've been teaching in at the Princeton Review, which mimics the Blue Book app, students are feeling nervous when they move to the second module because they feel like they performed really well on that first module, but then sometimes they're seeing some easy questions on the second module. And then they're questioning themselves, did I not perform as well in that first module than the second module? And I'll talk about this in the future, but that's a lot of information, but that's important to note. Mercedes, we'll move on to the second one. And folks, again, just as we said at the beginning, don't hesitate to ask a question here. I will do my best to answer them. And Mercedes, you just volley them over my way.
Here's one question.
Okay, cool. I'm ready.
Do we know how many module 2 pathways there are? 3 low, medium, or hard?
This is a good question. Yeah. So the idea of, how many different modules are there? Should students perform, moderately well on the first module? What second module will they see? We don't yet know. And this, I think the College Board, and if history proves correct, in other iterations of changes that have happened over the years, the College Board, and again, I think props to them, has been gracious about sharing a great deal of information. And I expect the same thing will happen with these administrations of the new exam. The truth is that we don't yet know. But what I do think is that there's not going to be just a handful of possible modules that a student will see. The College Board has been creating a massive amount of questions over the last years in preparation for this digital rollout. And again, they're being so bullish about this. So Mercedes, if you and I were literally sitting in the same classroom, taking the digital exam, the likelihood that you and I would see the exact same questions would be near nil. Particularly as we move along through the exams, the questions are going to be so unique that it tampers down the idea of cheating, and I likely think it disqualifies, or the likelihood of seeing just a handful of modules that are kind of cookie cutter is very slim. And again, I'll make sure that, obviously we have your contact information. As we know more, when the new exam comes out in March and we start to get that data, I'm happy to, without question, I'll share it with you guys.
Thank you, Rob. And Suzette, yes, we will share a recording of the webinar. There was also a question from John. What's meant by pre-test questions?
Pre-test questions are two things. I call them warm-up questions. So it's just that students will be taking those questions just to start off in the exam. What types of questions there are. Now, the College Board may choose to use those pre-test questions, which are not counted in your score. And John, maybe that was the spirit of your question. I should just say this at the beginning. Your pre-test questions are not counted in your score. They're simply warm-up questions for you. The College Board may choose to use those questions on future digital SATs, but we don't know yet. But again, they're treating them as practice warm-up questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob.
Cool. You're welcome. Okay, yeah, this is my big animation that of the thing that we just described. So first module, depending on how well you do, you'll see a less difficult or a more difficult module. And again, the language that the College Board is using, and then we'll move on from this slide, but the language that the College Board is using is, it is important, because if you perform really well in that first module, you'll see questions that are likely more difficult than the first, but you're going to see some easy questions in that second module as well, even if you rock the first module. But the same thing will happen on the other end as well. So just to keep that in our nomenclature. Yeah. So when we think about high scores being capped, for each of those things, so we understand, and I'm trying to explain here this one point, and I'll just say it. If a student doesn't perform well in the first module, then those students will never be able to get a superlative. They will never be able to get a perfect score on the SAT. I'm sure you've probably figured that math out, but it is important to say it out loud. If a student is missing questions on that first one, the likelihood that they will ever see enough difficult questions on the second module is kind of slim to get them to that superlative score or near that superlative score.
Robin,
again, we're going to College Board is going to be. I'm sorry, Mercedes. Please go ahead.
2 questions. Are the reading passages shorter? And then also, are the warm-up questions ID'd for students?
The warm-up questions are ID'd for students, and the reading passages questions. And I'm sorry I didn't note this on the last slide. Forgive me. There are going to be, and this is, I think, is a real value for students, because one of the things that we continuously hear at the Princeton Review, feedback from students on the current pencil and paper test, is that the longer reading passages, you'll remember this, there's a long reading passage on the left-hand side of the page, and then 5 questions associated with that reading passage. It eats up very precious time that students don't have in a timed environment, because students will read the passage, they'll go to the questions, and then start to look for the sentences that they have to go back to. That all goes away. There's going to be 2 to possibly 3 questions associated with only one, or 2 to 3 sentences in a reading passage associated with only one question. So the speed, the possibility of students firing through this at a more rapid pace is incredibly high because of that change. So the long reading passages will go away. The reading passages will simply be 2 sentences to 3 sentences associated with one question, and then you move to the next one. Good question, and that's an important point to make. This we've hit on, so we don't have to spend much time on this, but students can't guess the level of difficulty. As we've talked about, moving from first module to second module, friends, it is a cognitive game, right? It is a confidence game, because we're seeing with our own students at the Princeton Review that, again, their confidence gets shaken if they're seeing easy questions on that second module because they feel like they performed superlatively on the first. And what we're telling our students here is that you cannot guess the level of difficulty of those questions in the second module. It will make us it will eat up our time and destroy our confidence if we go down that rabbit hole. You can only focus on the questions that are in front of you. And that's obviously easier said than done, but it's something that we're teaching our students at the Princeton Review over and over again to prepare them for this new digital exam. Mercedes, we'll take a look at the next slide. Okay, content. Oh, that's a good one. Well, we can move on here. Okay. Folks, let's just remember, that the SAT is going to be asking the same things. Now, the same things that it asked on the pencil and paper incarnation are essentially going to be the same things that it asks on the digital incarnation. The College Board could have decided to change not only the structure of the exams, literally the tectonic shift from pencil and paper to digital. They could have changed the content as well, but they chose not to. And again, big props to the College Board for not doing that, because they want these tests to be, again, separate but equal. So the content is eerily the same, but the platform will be different. So students are still going to be tested on high school level reading, reading, writing, and math, as you can see here. But they will be presented in a different way, from the pencil and paper to the digital incarnation. We're going to take a look at some of those things. Yeah, and this, folks, I know that I am speaking to the enlightened on this on this webinar, but high school tests are far different from an SAT, from a standardized test. There is a slight exception here for AP exams, which test us on our, content expertise in a particular discipline. But high school tests, you test us on a limited subject matter. We have plenty of time. You can read these things as well as I can. Human graded is a big point. And when we start to think about SAT and why it has been such a specter for so many students and parents and caused so much nervousness, is that we understand that the material that can be tested could have happened over years of time. And when in a timed environment, students have anxiety. And which one of us has not been guilty of that in the past, right? When faced with a timed environment, and asked to pull on years of data or years of material that we have gotten over time, that is a tough order for a lot of students. I do think, and just to put out the value of being prepared for a test and test prep in general, I think the best thing I can say about test preparation is that students understand not only the content, but they understand the timed environment. They understand the instructions. They understand the questions that the College Board will ask and more likely ask on their exam, so that they are already schooled in that by the time they sit for the new exam. And that's the same thing I'm teaching for pencil and paper as well as digital, because it will be completely the same in that regard. That concept is completely the same. Mercedes, you just volley questions my way if it's there, but if they're not, we'll just whiz through these things. Okay, so when we think about this, this will always be a question on the SAT. Digital and, of course, pencil and paper, which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? So again, just being familiar, not only with the instructions, but the question types that are coming in. To me, again, this is the value of preparing for a test, because you're preparing for the content as well as the questions. So those questions do not make us nervous when we're faced with them in the timed environment. Mercedes, we'll take a look at the next one. Okay. Just to put it out there, again, College Board reminds us that the questions are easy, medium, and difficult. But the truth is, and we'll look at the next animation, Mercedes, the College Board is the one that is defining easy, medium, and difficult. We might not be in agreement as to that level of difficulty on question type. So we should just put it out there. This is kind of I just put this in here for a chuckle, but the truth is, we have to understand our audience, and the audience here, is the College Board determining that level of difficulty. Mercedes, we could just fire past this one.
Before we move on, there are a few questions, Rob.
Yes, of course.
With you. What happens to students who don't have a strong math background? How are you adjusting for that?
Well, yeah. Here's the thing, and I would give the same recommendation, pencil and paper or digital. And let's just talk about testing in general. The SAT causes fear and anxiety in any incarnation for students that feel that they have a perceived weakness in any area, whether it be reading or math, doesn't matter. And I tell students over and over again that the SAT and the ACT are knowable and navigable. If a student knows that they have a weakness or they have an area that they are not excelling in, then prepare yourself. And it doesn't matter how you prepare yourself. I tell each of my students, prospective or otherwise, you must take 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prepare for the SAT. You can do that in a course, in a structured environment. You can do it with a tutor. You can do it by yourself. But work on the problems, particularly, and using the math example, if we know that you have trouble in math, or you have a weakness in math, then you understand these concepts, but understand the likely math questions that are going to be asked in the exam. and then prepare for those over that 6-week time frame. It is, I'm making it sound simple because in my mind, it is simple. Students can understand where they need help and bumper in that help in a healthy amount of time to feel confident during that exam. I tell all of my students, you might not love me during these 6 weeks that we're going to be together, but you are going to be ready to pounce on that SAT come test day. And the truth is that confidence, you can feel it in the room when students come in a timed environment. And that's my long-winded answer. Mercedes, you said there was another question there?
Yes. Is there continuity in topic from one topic to the next in the reading and writing test? In other words, one question build upon a previous one in any fashion.
Understood. And this is a good question. The answer is yes, that I've seen this happen in the practice exams. Whether I do not know, however, if that is going to happen, if the College Board is committing for that continuity to happen in the new digital exam. But that's a good question, and I will find that out. Mercedes, maybe we'll just take a quick note here, just to make sure that I'm honest, the continuity of the exam.
Okay, and
for the reading section, yep.
Share one more. If I'm not mistaken, schools had the choice had to choose if they were going digital or staying with paper and pencil at the end of the 2022-2023 academic school year, correct? Is it too late for schools to change that selection?
And maybe it's a wordsmithing question here. Schools do not have the ability to choose one or the other. The pencil and paper SAT is going away, period. There are some very, very small possible exceptions for students that have documented learning differences that there may be an administration of the pencil and paper exam. But it is a rounding error at best. The pencil and paper exam will go away. Schools will all near 100% have to adapt to the digital exam. No other way of looking at it.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep. Okay. Folks, we'll just talk a little bit about this because I know this is geeky fun for me. And we're just gonna, Mercedes, let's not show the next animation yet. So who is the 13th president of the United States? Now, some folks out there, and you can use the chat, but some folks out there may just know this off the top of their head. I was giving a lecture in Texas on Monday, and I was talking about the digital SAT. And I was faculty and administrators, and somebody shouted out the 13th president because they knew it. But Mercedes, let's take a look at the answer choices here. So we have 4 answer choices, just as students will see on the digital SAT. And the point of this concept is process of elimination, which we have been teaching forever at the Princeton Review in any incarnation of the SAT. Well, so while we might not know the name of the 13th president, we can eliminate any number of these answer choices. We know it's not Washington, we know it's not Reagan, we know it's not Biden. So the obvious answer is Millard Fillmore. So we understand, and this is obviously a cartoon example, but the truth is process of elimination works. And students can over and over again on the SAT, the ACT, any number of exams, including their high school exams, if they can cross off 1 or 2 answer choices out of 4 or 5, well, then why not just guess? Or in this case, get the question right because you know that the other 3 questions are wrong. The other 3 possible answer choices are wrong. This is powerful for students. And again, that idea of being able to pounce on the exam because you know how to bear hug this strategy of process of elimination is empowering to students because it saves them time, makes them feel confident, and they can move on to the next question without knowing the actual answer to this, just up in their nugget at the beginning. Okay, we'll move on, Mercedes.
And we have a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, go ahead, sure.
One from Suzette. Is there a way to learn more about prep courses that Rob's referring to? Yes, Keisha is on. She is going to discuss those options. And then Christine, is there a way for educators to get access to Blue Book to see the practice digital SATs?
Yes. So for Christine, well, for the first question, yes, Keisha's going to be taking that. And Mercedes, you'll just keep me honest on time when Keisha has to come on because I know I'm yapping on here. The second question was about the Blue Book app. The answer is absolutely. You may, and I think you should log in and create an account with College Board for the Blue Book. They've released probably two different sets of question types that I know about. The first was last year. It was sort of a sample set, and then last November they released 4 full-length practice tests, and they continue to release other practice materials, which are, one, it's going to be in the Blue Book app. 2, it's practice materials that the College Board has created. Now, listen, we have done the same thing at the Princeton Review in creating massive amounts of content to mimic the College Board so that students can take real practice test questions. But you're very right to be able to say, let's get our hands on these things. Let's start looking at these things. Let our students start looking at these things. It is the best way to prep when you understand the question types. Folks, I put this out here because I noted before that this is exactly what the Blue Book app will look like. This is the reading and the writing section. And you'll see here, if you look at the right-hand side of the page, number 16, and it says mark for review. So as we talked about, you have mobility, great mobility in your ability to move around in that module. And, no longer will you be nervous that you're going to miss one of the bubbles on your Scantron sheet because you've been moving away. The College Board has saved us from that agony, and we can mark it for review, meaning you can go back to that question later. Mercedes, we just have an animation on that one, yeah. So you can use process of elimination, and then you can mark it as well. This is folks, this general testing strategies, as we talked about, is the same for pencil and paper and digital. We've already said that, Mercedes, we can move on. Okay, the calculator. One of the other thorns in a student's side on the pencil and paper SAT is that some sections on the math section some sections on the math portions of the SAT allow a calculator and others do not. The College Board has adjusted that. You may use a calculator on any of the math questions. Feels great. Yeah, feels awesome. And the truth is that students can bring their own calculators in. And what the College Board learned, again, in May of 2020 with the AP exam, is that some students simply did not have the correct hardware. Their computers weren't up to code, or they were using older computers, or they were using older tablets, or whatever. The Blue Book app has now a built-in calculator. So again, the question of access and equity, students might have a fancier calculator than others, doesn't matter. Students can use the most modern Desmos calculator. We're going to look at on the next slide, Mercedes. And the Desmos calculator is one that many students, and actually many adults, may have already been familiar with, right? So when we think about it, the interface is one that has been used. It is not exclusive to the College Board. It is simply a calculator that many online products, digital products, may use. And you can see it just on the left-hand navigation. Mercedes, we can move on. Yeah, colleges and the digital SAT. Yeah, go ahead, Mercedes.
We have about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll have just enough time then to hand it off to Keisha to.
Awesome. Mercedes, I'll look for you just give me the 5 minute when we're 5 minutes, and then I'll wrap up. Folks, and this is the last beat that I want to talk about: colleges and the SAT and ACT. I mentioned this up at the beginning. Now we can Mercedes, you can show the animation here. Awesome. Obviously, there was, as we talked about, from 2007, somewhere in the latter part, mid to latter aughts, the ACT started to be the most chosen standardized test over the SAT. So it had it dominated the market when it came to testing SAT and ACT. And that lasted until 2000, and as you can see here, 2017, early to mid 2017. Let's remember, the SAT changed in 2016, and it became, I'll say it out loud, very much like the ACT. Right, it did away with the testing penalty that happened before. It moved from 5 answer choices to 4 answer choices, and the gambit that the College Board, bet on, it worked. It worked because the SAT became more like the ACT, and then all of a sudden, the SAT started to sell itself into states that were using the ACT as an exit exam, and now Illinois is a great example. I know we have some Illinois counselors with us today. Illinois, changed a couple of years ago to an SAT state as opposed to an ACT state. So it started to pull back a great deal of market share. Obviously, you can see here 2020. Mercedes, we'll just stay on that last slide. We can see in 2020, it started to crater during the pandemic, but it has been repairing. about 1.7, well, a little over 1.7 million. You can see there's 1.3 million taking the ACT. Okay, Mercedes, we'll take a look at the next one. Okay, who's still taking this? Now, this data, which I will share with you, in addition to the deck, I'll send you a link to the survey that my team has been conducting at the Princeton Review. And the survey is called College Hopes and Worries. And we've been collecting this data annually from college-bound students and their parents. And we ask them all sorts of questions around their hopes and worries around the college process. But now listen, if I were ACT's CEO, I'd be nervous as heck if I had seen what students and parents, 15,000 students and parents were asking. You know, students are still taking the SAT. Answer is yes. They're taking more of the SAT than they are the ACT, a measly 16%. So when we think about it, you are likely going to be asked this question, because Lord knows I am asked it. Should I take the SAT or the ACT? Since the SAT is changing, may I take the ACT? And folks, if history proves correct, that's going to happen, right? ACT is likely going to repair some of its market share because the SAT is changing and some students just don't want to be the guinea pigs. Other folks are saying, well, it's good to be a guinea pig because College Board is likely going to grade on a curve. So we'll see what happens. But just to put it out there, this is what students were answering in 2022, just their preference in exams. Mercedes, we can move on. Okay, yeah, split decision and thinking about the SAT going digital. You know, what's your opinion on the SAT going digital? Biggest piece of the pie, students are saying that the SAT in its digital incarnation is going to be a better test. Does this stand to reason? Of course, right? You guys know this. I mean, your students are digital natives, right? They're more comfortable than taking a test with a number 2 pencil. Sell your stock if you haven't already in number 2 pencils. But we understand that you know, students are likely embracing this exam. You are likely attesting to this when the 2 cohorts of data of score back data came back for the PSATs. You know, the last one just came out right before Thanksgiving. So we know that students are feeling pretty bullish around their experience on the preliminary SAT, the PSAT. Not that they don't need test prep. They certainly, I think many students are doing that. We're seeing that in our own numbers. But they're feeling comfortable in the platform. And they're feeling comfortable that the content is, you know, pretty nearly the same from digital incarnation to the from the pencil and paper to digital, and this feels pretty good. You know, we have the small 9% that said we're not going to take either exam. Okay, I write a couple of books for Princeton Review, as I said before. One of them is called The Best 389 Colleges. I'll put that in the nice letter that I send to you. But just to put it out there, how are schools treating the SAT and the ACT? Right, obviously the vast majority of schools are test optional, at least temporarily. So let's just do these down. Test required, obviously you know what that means, right? There's the MITs and the University of Floridas of the world, right? MIT said last year that it was going to reinstate its requirement of the SAT because in fall of 2022 for that class, only 7% of students that applied to MIT in 2022 chose to withhold their SAT and ACT scores, right? So now MIT is an outlier, but there are schools that are obviously requiring the SAT. Test flexible simply means that if students aren't submitting the SAT or ACT, then they are encouraged to submit another kind of standardized test, obviously AP exams, maybe IB exams. But the vast majority of schools are test optional, at least temporarily. And this, folks, is of value to us because we understand that many students are submitting those SATs if they choose to. It puts that right, you know, that ability to exercise their right to submit it or to not. Test-free schools, the UCs and the Cal State systems we talked about before, even if you submitted to UCLA, your SAT or ACT score, they'd have to dump it at the beginning. Mercedes, we'll move on. Oh gosh, yeah. You know what, Mercedes, let's just take a look at the Cornell example because I know I'm running out of time. Folks, I think I'm gonna okay, here we go. So I tried to pick 3 schools. I'm just gonna pick on one Ivy that is still temporarily test optional. And I'm just gonna put it out there because you are undoubtedly having to translate many of these shenanigans that administrators, deans and directors of admission and their teams are describing around testing policies at schools. So the dean of admission from Cornell said about their SAT optional status, and I'll read this one to you, it's too good not to read. We anticipate that many students who will have had reasonable and uninterrupted opportunities to take the ACT and our SAT will continue to submit results, and those results will continue to demonstrate preparation for college level work. Now, folks, I wish I could hear all of the audible groans that are likely being said at your desks or at your homes. This to me, and I suspect to you, does not feel like a bear hug of an embrace of a test optional policy from Cornell. What Cornell is saying is that if you have the ability to take the SAT or ACT, then you better take it. Because in their words and not ours, it continues to demonstrate preparation for college level work. Do I believe this? No. Do you believe this? Likely not. Does it matter, however, what we believe? The answer is like, it doesn't. It doesn't. Our opinion doesn't matter. Our job, certainly my job at the Princeton Review, is to supply you with encyclopedic knowledge to understand how schools, individual schools, are treating their test optional strategy, their protocol. And that's just one of them. So anyway, you know that you have this is my one big animation there, Mercedes. I love that one. There are many schools that are temporarily test optional. They are likely waiting to figure out, now we're 4 years in, which cohort has done better. I admitted this student with an SAT score during the pandemic years, let's say, and this student without. Those students have fared. How have those students fared in the school that I have admitted them to? And I suspect, do a little soothsaying here, I suspect that colleges and universities will be making a formal declaration to either continue with test optional admission or embrace it or deny it altogether. And we're going to see that in the next couple of years. Mercedes, I think that might be my oh, if you didn't hear a tire of me talk, I have a YouTube channel, which Mercedes will put into the chat. Folks, this is awesome. You have been a great crowd. You can follow me again on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be handing this off to Keisha, and who's going to take the slides. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rob.
Of course.
A wealth of amazing information and always done delightfully. So we really appreciate your expertise here.
Welcome, my friend.
I'm here to talk about how we can help you prepare your students for success on standardized exams, including the SAT and ACT, AP exams. What we do is we want to make sure that you understand the difference between our public program offerings for things like prep courses versus the institutional offerings that we provide that are school funded for educators to be able to bring our programs into your schools. So that's what I want to talk about today. There's three different sort of main areas that we are able to bring ourselves onto your campuses to provide this for. It's instructor provided courses where we provide Princeton Review trained instructors to your students. We also have professional development training, which is a great opportunity for your staff to gain resources from Princeton Review to deliver our programs to your students. And then there are opportunities when you have that cadre of students who work best on their own to be able to access independent study resources through Princeton Review so that we can provide comprehensive preparation options for students doing independent study as well. We can go to the next slide. The great thing about our school-funded programs for schools and districts is that we get an opportunity to look at your whole learning community and see where we can fit in to help with the specific needs you have, the specific student populations you're wanting to serve, and the kind of budget you have for that. So for students, it's obvious they're able to receive comprehensive instruction from experts here at the Princeton Review. We've already done the research and development and have the tools that they're going to need and the materials to make sure that they're successful. For school teachers and staff, we're able to come in with our master trainers, who I'll tell you more about in a minute, and be able to give comprehensive training to your staff to be able to deliver our pedagogy to your students in a flexible format throughout the school year. And obviously, if we're doing either of those, administrators and teachers who are participating in that want to see the results, right? They want to have that real-time data to see what the students are doing, where they're struggling, what kind of improvement they're seeing. And so we provide that as well in our administrator dashboard. You can go to the next slide. So I talked about instructor provided courses. This is an opportunity for us to either provide in person on your campus where available, or likely an online dynamic classroom space from Princeton Review, an opportunity for us to really spend some time with your students. The amount of time we have that you can give us to engage with your students is going to change, and that's why we have so many different options you can see up here for how we can prepare them. If we just have a little bit of time, that's better than nothing. So we can do something like a one-on-one where we just have just enough time to cover some key topics and introductory, most essential strategies that students need to know to get their prep started and to understand the importance of preparing differently for standardized exams like this. As Rob was mentioning, these are very different from school tests, and they need to have a different strategy for preparing for them. If we can get a lot more time with your students, then we can do something like fundamentals or ultimate that you see here, where we can go deeper into each type of question, give students a toolkit for everything they're going to encounter on the test, and give them a lot of practice with how to immerse that into their strategy and really understand their strengths and weaknesses, all the way up to working with them across a whole semester or year even, which we have done in different regions of the country to great success as well. Next slide. What students receive, and this is just a small look, is support through our digital formats. So the student portal is something that every student will have available to them who's taking any kind of program with Princeton Review's institutional programs. This is where they go to get everything they need, all of their practice tests that are mirrored after the Blue Book experience, all of the video lessons that will have recordings of their classes if they are online and can be recorded. For the digital SAT, we're introducing digital manuals that will be available for students in ebook format inside of their login as well. So lots of resources, and we're happy to show those to you guys. Next slide. For professional development, this is a great opportunity to provide a sustainable option for your schools to be able to build a program around what best fits your needs, whether you want to do something during the school day, a 0 or 7th period experience, or just you want your teachers to be able to deliver this material. So as you can see on here, we have expert training from experts, we have best teacher resources, and we're going to support you with our customer success team that you'll keep in touch with throughout our experience together to make sure that we are helping you reach your goals with the program. We have different ways we can implement this where all of your trained teachers can be trained on the full exam, but we can also separate it out. Many of our partners just want their math teachers to only go and train about the math section, and their English teachers to only train about the English section. So we can separate those out by subject as well. And if you've already done presentation, I've already done professional development with us in the past for previous versions of the SAT, then we're happy to go back in and do a refresher training to update the teacher's knowledge for the new exam as well, which will be a shorter but really important experience to helping your teachers be prepared to deliver the content to the student. Next slide. Who do they learn from? They learn from our absolute best trainers here. Our master trainers are the absolute best of our everyday, certified Princeton Review instructors, and they have to demonstrate, consistent excellence in teaching, both, receive outstanding evaluations from their own, students as well as our partners. And just, exhibit excellence in their content tests with us as well. There's a full certification process and application process to become a master trainer. So it's not just anyone who will be able to get into those training skills workshops, but they'll also have to pass them with, flying colors from their Uber trainers there. So these are people who are very knowledgeable, typically have been with us for several years, have been training and teaching for Princeton Review for many, many years. And when we do a professional development program with you all, you'll spend up to 20 hours with these master trainers, either on your campus in person when we have that opportunity to be there, or live online in our proprietary classroom space where we can record that session and your teachers can keep access to refer back time and time again to their training. Next slide. So how do you bring us to your schools? Give me a call, send me an email. You can request a meeting with me on my calendly.com/Keisha Helon. And we'll do things like demo all of the resources so you can have a visual of the kind of teacher and student and administrator dashboards we provide to students. You can take a look at the materials we provide. You can ask a lot of questions about, the different program options we have. And we do have special institutional pricing that is not available on our website as well, that I can share with you how this all works and how we can fit into most budgets, smaller to larger, to help you really get the prep for students that they need. Our philosophy is that every student needs to be prepared for these exams, whether they're doing that with a book on their own or if they're doing that through your school program, and getting the expert help from Princeton Review instructors as well. So I definitely look forward to hearing from you guys, and let me know if you have more questions.
Thank you, Keisha. So we're at the Q&A portion of the webinar. So for everyone who's still hanging out with us, if you have any questions, I see a few, so I'll start sharing those, but feel free to start adding your questions in the Q&A chat. Let's see. Just looking through them. How do I get more information about being able to administer the DSAT during the school day? Keisha, with this be or...
Go ahead, Keisha. Yeah.
I can take it. For official administrations of the exam, you'll want to go to the College Board directly. So you can start at their website. You can give them a call from their educator pages to make sure that you find out the exact process for that. So for anything official test situated, you really want to go and connect directly with the College Board about those. But anything like test prep related or getting more information about how to prepare your students or your staff for these exams, you can reach out to me and to the Princeton Review.
Great. I think that might answer the other question. Can I receive information on any upcoming teacher trainings? And is any of this train the trainer, or are all of these student facing trainings?
So the professional development that I was talking about is about our master trainers teaching your teachers, not the students. But the other materials that I was talking about in terms of, instructor provided courses, those are typically directly to the students. So the answer is both. We can do both. It just depends on what your needs are. Some programs, they just want us to use our instructors and do courses directly to the students. And some of our partners, they prefer to prepare their teachers, and then their teachers will use our materials to teach their students on their own flexible schedules.
Excellent, thank you. And then Rob, 2 questions for you. One from Diana. What happens to students who don't have a strong math background? Oh, I think we answered that. My apologies. One other question, will there still be order of difficulty in math questions?
I suspect the order of difficulty questions are still going to be there. We're seeing that on the practice exams. But again, once we move that from the first cohort to the second cohort is not going to be the same uniformity that we saw in order of difficulty questions in the past. I think that's the easiest way, Mercedes, to answer.
Excellent, thank you. All the other comments are thank you. We really appreciate the information. I don't see any other questions. If you have a final question, please put it in the chat now and I'll share it. I'll just give a couple of seconds to see if anything else comes in, but otherwise, I think we've answered all the questions, all 63 questions. So fantastic.
Well done.
All right,
Awesome.
well, I don't see anything else. So on that note, I'm going to share the last slide with Keisha and Rob's contact information should you have any questions. And I don't see anything else coming in. So thank you all for participating. You were a fantastic audience. And any last words, Keisha or Rob, before we sign off?
Such a pleasure. Yeah. Good luck. And again, don't be bashful to reach out to us. We beat that point down, but it's a good one.
I echo Rob. Thank you so much. And we look forward to speaking with you. Take care.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
folks.
Thank you.
Be well. Bye-bye.